Welcome to City Cinematheque, where the art and pleasure of the movies are the subject of serious discussion. I'm your host, Jerry Carlson, and I teach film studies at the City College of the City University of New York. Today, it's our pleasure to continue our Romanian cinema series. We're going to be seeing The Cruise from 1981. It's a political satire. You might say it's in the same vein as better-known films, such as Loves of a Blonde by Milos Forman from Czechoslovakia, or even the works of Robert Altman and of Michael Ritchie from the 1970s. In any case, it's a real treat, and it really digs into the troubles of Romanian society of that particular epoch. We'll be talking about that and other things after today's screening. It's a pleasure to welcome to City Cinematheque Carmen Firan, a distinguished Romanian critic, poet, novelist, and screenplay writer. Now, take a cruise in Romania. Welcome back to City Cinematheque. I hope you've enjoyed the cruise you've just taken for almost 2 hours. I'm sorry, but I don't think such cruises are still available. I know many of you are doubtless ready to call a travel agent right now. But there is discussion available for the next 30 minutes about this intriguing political satire, and it's a pleasure to welcome to City Cinematheque the distinguished Romanian poet, novelist, screenplay writer, and critic, Carmen Firan. Carmen worked as a critic in Romania, writing about film. She is also a screenplay writer, as I mentioned, and those who might want to look into her take on satire of the communist regime might look to her novel, The Farce, which has been translated from Romanian and is available in English. Thank you so much for joining us today, Carmen.
Thank you.
This film is almost 25 years old. It's a distant film in certain kinds of ways. Could you tell us a little bit about the circumstances of Romania under the Ceausescu regime, to be sure, at that particular moment, and the story of this film? I mean, the making reception of the film.
Yeah, so the movie was released in 1981 in full communism. And even now, it's a mystery for many people how such a movie could be presented in theaters, knowing that the censorship at that time was very vigilant and very tough. The movie had a premiere in April 1981. About 1.5 million people saw the movie, but after this, he was banned because of this very strong and dangerous for the system political contest. Actually, Mircea Daneliuc, the screenplay writer and the director, was a sort of dissident among the system, and he did many other movies on trying to present the communist Romania as a fresco, to create a chronic of these times. I was told, I don't know if it's true, but I trust people's word, that Ceausescu never read books, never went to a theater, but he was a big fan of Romanian movies. So the censorship was very vigilant with the cinema in Romania. That's why it's still a mystery, as I said, even today, that we had a chance to see this movie back in Romania 24 years ago. And now when I watch this movie today, I had the impression that it's not a feature, it's a documentary.
Very good, very good. I think it's a very good point, because this is not a film that has the artifice, for example, of some of the large historical pictures made in Romania. We have a sense of very much being there. I mean, being on that boat, being in those rowboats, being on location.
And the actors, they act so natural. They act so natural that you have the impression that you are part of this cruise, that leader, the beloved leader of the ship, it's a real leader in real life. We could see many of these in Romania at that time. 1981 actually was the beginning of the worst part of communism, in the worst dictatorship in Eastern Europe, because of Ceausescu,
right,
of course, who was a huge, tragic, and a bad figure in Eastern Europe and put a mark on this country, mentalities, people, and lives for many, many years. Even now, we can see what the new man that Ceausescu dreamt means in Romania today. And actually, this Comrade Procra is maybe the new man that Ceausescu dreamt to have.
Let's talk a little bit about that character. First of all, one of the things I think you've already said that leads us very interestingly into the film is that everybody in this film is a recognizable type. That is, we may relate to them as an individual character. And by the way, it's worth mentioning, as you pointed out to me, that Mircea Daneliuc, the director, plays the role of the man with one kidney.
Yeah, it's the young man in the movie. He was in his 30s at that time, so a very young director, but very powerful. We can compare him, if you want, with Andrzej Wajda in Poland, or in the United States with Robert Altman. Maybe we'll have the chance to speak more about this. Anyway, the movie itself has many meanings. There are many symbols of this movie. One could be that this ship of pleasure, let's say, the beginning looks like a ship of a cruise of pleasure. It's Romania itself floating on a very apathetic water,
right,
very dirty water, where in the end we can expect only dead fish to see in it. On the other hand, this cruise could be the cruise of life. These people are rowing with their own forces.
Absolutely.
They advance with their own arms. So it's a struggle, it's not a pleasure anymore. We can see that from an entertainment or a reward, a cruise we have a punishment in the end.
Well, I have to say that as I was watching the film, if this is their reward, what would their punishment be? Because
exactly.
The reward seems to be a kind of punishment.
And from my point of view, there are two big characters in the movie. Is this Comrade Procra, acted by a less known actor in Romania. He's not a big actor, but he's fantastic, natural, and powerful as a character. And it's also the young generation. The young generation, I will develop my idea later on, has this power to concentrate the whole atmosphere and life in Romania at that time through their feelings,
right,
to their acts, to their behavior, to the lack of hopes and enthusiasm and perspective they have. This Procra, this Comrade Procra, the leader, can be also the beloved dictator, the beloved leader of the country. He's coward. He's scared not to fail in his intent to present to these people a fake Romania, a fake reality. And he's very proud of his past, but he fears his future. That's why actually he fails in everything, as a husband, as a leader, as a human being. And in the end, from his voiceover, the so-called diary, if you remember in the end that he read, it's not actually a diary. There are reports that he writes and he sends every day to his superior in order to keep his privileges and his position.
And it's a devastatingly ironic ending, because when we hear that voiceover at the end, we have already seen all of these actions, and we have seen their, the failures, the anger, the hypocrisy, the abuse of power, by the way, both by the young people and by Procra himself. So we're caught with what I'll call the official version that he's sending in, and the reality, the surreal reality that we've seen take place.
Exactly, because this movie has another side. It's this surrealistic side. Romania at that time was a surrealistic country with a lot of potential, in intellectuals and artistic life, but with a lie who actually is the leader of the country. The lie is the biggest character in this movie also.
Okay.
Everybody lies. Everybody fake reality. Everybody wants to be somebody else. This Proca actually, he's a very wrong model for these young people. And coming to these young people, they supposed to be winners of different contests. But they are winners, politically correct selected. They are not the best Romanian young people. They are not artists, they are not scientists, they are not academics. They are winner of stupid contests, political contests, like Skillful Hands or the cleanest working place.
Right.
So I was tempted to be very harsh with these young people, but then I realized that it's only the opportunistic part of the young generation. These young people are ready to cooperate with the leader in order to maintain or to indulge the leader, to have a small reward, a warmer place, for instance, to be on this ship, to be on this cruise.
Or the whole notion, just to follow up with some of the evidence, the whole notion that it was very important to have the women at the HQ, the headquarters, to help with things, where, you know, it's manifestly they want pretty girls around, and at the same time, the girls are quite cooperative. They're very happy, very happy to be there. So we get the fact that this is not, that exploitation is a two-way street here.
Absolutely, and this generation is very gray. They don't have any perspective, but they don't fight for their perspectives. They are passive, they are resigned, they are all, you know, half dead. And this cruise doesn't give them anything except struggle, except more sadness and more lack of hope. And I think the director, I remember now the director was criticized in Romania at that time because he presented the young people in such a way. He was a young man at that time also. But now I realize that his point of view is very valid even today. This character in the movie, if you want, puts in shadow the doctor that
yes,
we
indeed.
should speak about also. It's the intellectual who's not doing his profession, he's not a doctor. He enjoys, you know, having again a reward, and he's a sort of another ego of the leader, but with a diploma.
Right, exactly.
And we don't have to take in serious the conflict they have on the ship, because it's not a substantial conflict. They don't fight for meanings, sense. They fight for, they have a minor fight of egos.
Right, but it's a fight that's interesting because it has to do with, even though this is a doctor who has the credential and who's presumably an intellectual, but he's not really in that sense, we have, which is a little bit difficult for Westerners to understand, the whole pride that Proca has in the working class. That he has, that he's always so sensitive about the fact that he represents the working class when he talks to the people, when he, when they're playing the spoon game with the television, you're mocking a working man. So while the conflict is not substantial, it does show the kinds of divisions in.
Yes, but also Proca is an imposter. Actually,
yeah.
He's not proud of him coming from this working class. He's a coward. He fears.
Absolutely.
He fears to be anybody except the new man that he knows the superior will like to see in him. So he doesn't have a personality. He's like the water. He takes the shape of the vase where he's poured. So I think this Proca represents very well the mockery and the fake, the sickness of the system.
Right.
He doesn't have any belief. He doesn't believe in anything, in love, in work. No, because they simulate everything. They simulate being on a trip. They simulate having, for instance, fun in the socializing in the evenings. That game that you mentioned, the spoon game,
Yeah.
which actually is not a popular game in Romania, wasn't. And it's an invention that the director chose in order to show us the fear that was in our lives every day. When the young man puts the spoon on the TV screen, everybody, I mean, the people, they don't realize it was a game, but the leader is anxious because in that screen here he can see Ceausescu. In that time, in Romania, at that time, the TV program was only for 2 hours in the evening, between 8 to 10 p.m. And most of the time, the image of Ceausescu was on the screen. That's why Proca was so scared when he saw that somebody put a spoon on the screen, because he immediately in his head, in his mind, was Ceausescu on the screen. And of course, because he doesn't want to have a conflict, he quiets down the conflict that himself created. And again, is this farce, again is this mockery, because, you know, communism was different in East European bloc.
Right.
So in Romania, it was tragic, surrealistic, but also very ridiculous. Mm. And we can see in this movie that these people are so artificial. The actors are acting so natural that we have the real artificial.
That's the effect that it produces. The naturalistic acting produces this effect of how everyone is pretending, everyone is play acting.
More than this, between people there is a sort of bureaucracy of relations. Human relationships are a bureaucracy. They are not natural. When they speak one to each other, they imagine that there is an eye, an outside eye who is watching them all the time.
For example, the young woman with the short blonde hair who keeps changing her perspective according to whom she's addressing and how she reads the situation and how it will be read by others. And there's the wonderful moment in which somebody talks back to her and says, "Stop acting like the young pioneer leader," exactly. Which is exactly the role that she has assumed at that particular moment.
Yeah, people, they were histrionic at that time, and they imagined that coping with system meant to be opportunistic and to endure, you know, all these stupidities, all this nonsense that the system, through leaders as this Camera Proca brought to them. So we have to take in consideration also that at that time the communism looked eternal. Never ever thought that the communists will fail.
Right.
So these people, they're supposed to live their whole life in communism. So they're supposed to cope with the system somehow. That's why they are voicing, telling that we don't have to accuse so drastic these people for their behavior, for right. For their opportunism or cowardice or all this. But now, looking back, we have to tell that in Romania, the communism took so long and was so hard because there is the resilience inside the country, the right. dissidents, they weren't so many. On this ship of humiliation, we don't see any revolt.
Very interesting point.
Everybody is passive, everybody accepts everything, so there is no one voice to be against the leader or against the nonsense he's telling to them. This fake life is their real life.
I think it's an excellent point, and I want to make a distinction. I think it's important. I think follows from your point, and that is there's a certain sense in which they do rebel, but it's not really a rebellion. That is, it is the notion of when they go to the shore and they're supposed to stand around for a picture, they run off to play. And so one of the things that shows us is this kind of relationship under the conditions you've talked about so well, of the relationship of children to daddy. There's an a way in which Proca sees himself as the father of all of these people, but he sees them as children, and their notion of what they can get is a child's notion of how far you can test daddy. Can you run away and play somewhere else? But this is not in any sense a serious consideration of social or political conditions. And we see how the system not only makes everyone act in an artificial, histrionic manner, but it infantilizes people.
Yeah, and you know, all these revolts are in a very minor key.
Oh, absolutely.
They don't revolt against, you know, real issues,
exactly.
But they don't want to stay to take a picture. This is the dissidence, if you want. But you're right here, you know, Ceausescu was considered the father of the country. Okay, and each leader wanted to take his image, to imitate Ceausescu on their scale, on their level. So if you want Comrade Proca, it's a smaller Ceausescu. But on his ship, he's a dictator, he's the leader. Although it's a leader with fears.
Exactly.
And this is, I think, one of the main feelings you can have when you see this movie, very gray movie, very hazy movie, as the life in communism was, very gray and hazy, is the fear that it could happen to you.
Exactly. Now, you bring up, I think, very nicely some of the visual aspects of the film, because this film is also visually impressive. The way in which, again, we're supposed to be on this beautiful holiday, but there is this kind of haze over everything. This is not the bright, shining, you know, blue skies. We have the sense of the industrial pollution of the river, but we also have this you know, amazing set of shots that punctuate the entire film about the relationship of the lead boat to all of the rowboats, and the fact that Proca has the ultimate authority to either tell the people to get in line behind them and to geometrically, you know, control everything, control their lives, or to tell them to play catch up with the boat. And you know, you said earlier, I think so well, that there's this notion of the pleasure cruise as punishment.
Yeah, and on the other side, he was to be sometimes nice.
Of course. To
let them, give them the impression that he's not only a harsh father, but also a nice father. So they have some liberties inside this control, because of course he wants to control their lives, and he does.
Right.
But in the end he fails. He fails with everything. There is some life inside this cruise also. I mean, on the small boats there is a real life. People, they dance, they date, you know, they think about love, and also they want to survive. You know, sometimes I watch myself now speaking about communism, and sometimes I say to myself, maybe I'm not entitled to be so judgmental, critic, because people there, they didn't have any hope, and they had to survive in a sick system. Even now, you know, the mentalities in Romania, they are somehow ill because of 4 years of dictatorship. It's not easy to recover overnight. And that people inside this cruise, on this cruise, they are sick people.
Well, I think you make a very good point here, because you know, and this film is almost 2 hours long, so we get to know these people on this cruise very well, and a rather large, you know, a large cast, because while we have, you know, someone like Proca, whom we see more of, we keep moving around again in this manner of a Robert Altman picture, something like that, to all of these different characters. And what we really get, and I think one of the values of this film, or films like it, is we get a highly nuanced portrait of all the strategies of survival that people used under these circumstances, in which there was no obvious exit. And in all of the strategies, whether it's a minor resistance here or whether it's a major accommodation or minor accommodation here, how you had to think as well as how you had to behave to think that you would have a life today and perhaps a life in the future. One of the things I find interesting is that, this is the reward. I mean, this cruise is the best thing that's going to happen to them.
Exactly, and even the Danube, which is the biggest river in Europe, becomes a marsh, has the water of the Danube is a placid one.
Yeah.
Because again, the universe was a very small one with no horizons. They just row. They row without direction, having a model as Proca, without hope, without perspective, and without trying to get one. This is actually, if you want, the worst, perspective that the director put on his generation. They don't fight, they are resigned. And that's why the movie leaves us with a very ashes feeling in
Right.
the end. We feel like it's nothing to do there anymore. These people, you don't sympathize with them too much because you want them to do something,
Exactly.
to try something, at least a childish substantial thing.
Right.
But they keep this minor key, and the movie is shot in this minor key on purpose. Nobody try to speak about what they real feel or what they real want. It's only fake feelings, fake subjects between them.
I'm going to have to cut you off and say that I think we have not had a fake discussion here. We've been able to talk openly and I think very well about this particular film. If you'd like to know more about this series or about City Cinematheque, it'll come as no surprise that perhaps the best way to find out is through the internet. Please visit our website at www.cuny.tv. Again, www.cuny.tv. You can click on there on City Cinematheque, and you can click on our other programming at the station to find out what's going on. You'll also find ways to communicate with us, no surprise there again, by email. Carmen, I want to thank you for bringing really a wealth of knowledge and insight, firsthand experience, reflection. I certainly hope we'll have an opportunity to talk about other aspects of Romanian culture or something else in the future, but thanks for joining us today.
Thank you.
Great. And thank you for joining us today. I hope you'll come back to this series or to others on City Cinematheque. Bye-bye for now.